In this video, we are going to be looking at mastering AWS cost optimization, great strategies to reduce your cloud bills. And this video is being presented to you by Amazaya Tatapong. So, this is the content outline. We are going to be looking at cost optimization. As we are talking about cost optimization in the AWS cloud, it is very important for us to first of all know what is cost optimization before looking at how we can actually optimize our cost. And the second thing that we are going to see in this video is why cost optimization matters. What is the importance of cost optimization? Why should we be talking about cost optimization? We are also going to look at common mistakes that organization does or people does that drive up their cost in the AWS cloud, and we will go forward to look at 5 strategies that you can deploy to optimize your AWS spend, right? And if you are a beginner, there are going to be quick wins for beginner, and if you are not beginner and you are advanced in the AWS cloud, we are also going to look at advanced optimization techniques. So let us look at what is cost optimization. The term cost optimization have been existing even before cloud, right? It is a term that is being used in business. And when we talk about cost optimization in business, it is the strategic process of maximizing business value while minimizing unnecessary spending. Nobody will want to spend money on something that is not valuable to them. You don't want to spend money on something that is not useful to you. That is why the term cost optimization came about, because businesses realized that they were spending money on certain activities that were not actually providing value to them, that was not helping them to grow, that was not helping them to scale, that was not helping them to better satisfy their clients and their customer. And as a result, they look for a particular process or a particular strategy that they can actually use to be able to determine what are the activity that we do in business that provide value to us, and what are the activities that we do in business that does not provide value to us, that is not important to us. And when they develop the strategy, they now win and they now maximize their spend on what is important. That is, they will not spend more on what is giving them business value and then reduce their expenditure or cut off totally expenses on things that does not produce value to them, right? Let me take this example. Let us say you are hungry and you want to eat. So you want to eat pizza. You command 10 pizza. Every time you want to command pizza, you command take pizza. And when you command take pizza, you are going to see that at the end, you only eat maximum 3 of the pizza that you've commanded, and the remaining pizza are going to be wasted. You are not going to eat it. So what is going to happen? You now come to yourself, but what is it? I'm commanding pizza, 10 pizza all the time, and I'm spending money on all these 10 pizza, but at the end, I am only using 3 pizza. So as from today, I am going to command only 3 pizza that I will eat, and the other money that I'm spending for the 7 other pizza, I'm going to keep that money in my pocket to be able to do every other thing, right? You buy pizza because you want to eat. You don't buy pizza because you want to look at it and be satisfied, right? So because you only want to eat, you want to buy pizza because you want to eat, you only buy the amount of pizza that will satisfy you, that is going to bring down your taste or your hunger. And when you've eaten that and you are satisfied, you forget about that, right? You eat to become satisfied. So that is what cost optimization is: spending money only on resources or tools that are important to you, that would drive up business costs, that would drive up business value, and also minimize expenditure. So now, in the context of cloud and DevOps, cost optimization means efficiently managing resources tools and workflows to reduce costs without sacrificing performance, reliability, or scalability. When you are in business or in the cloud, what is your objective? To be able to satisfy your customers, to be able to make sure that the application that you are deploying in the cloud should be performant, they should be reliable, and also at time when there is need, they should be scalable. That is what you want to use the cloud for. Now, for you to be able to attain this objective, having a performant, reliable, and scalable application, you will need certain resources like maybe AWS EC2, you will need RDS database, S3. These are resources and every other resources in the cloud that are very important for the workload that you want to deploy. You will also need tools like monitoring tools and every other tools that will be important for you to be able to achieve this. And then you will have workflows like CI/CD that you want to deploy with AWS pipeline and all the rest. These are various tools that you need for you to be able to attain performance, reliability, scalability, and valuability in the cloud, right? These are what you need. But now, cost optimization comes in the fact that while attaining all this value, you make sure that the resources that you have, you manage them effectively. You don't spend too much on what is not necessary for you, right? So that is what cost optimization is, managing your resources efficiently in order for you to be able to drive valuable business outcome. So cost optimization is not just about cutting costs, it's about making smart data driven decision to ensure every dollar spent drive meaningful outcomes, right? So when you talk about cost optimization, it's not only about you cutting money and putting in your pocket. No, the importance of cost optimization is first of all to drive value, to give value to your client, and then you want to give that value without spending uselessly. That is what cost optimization is. So you make sure that every dollar that you spend is meaningful. You don't spend money for nothing. Now, we are going to look at the reason why cost optimization matters in the AWS cloud. So, one thing that you have to know is that AWS build can grow fast without proper monitoring. If you do not monitor and manage your resources very well in the AWS cloud, your bills are going to grow fast. You are going to pay for what you are not using, just like John buying 10 pizza and using only 3 pizza and paying additional 7 pizza that he is not using. You are going to pay for a compute that you are not using, you pay for storage that you are not using, you pay for databases that you are not using. You are going to pay for a lot of resources or a lot of things that you are not using. So that is why, in order for you to only spend your money on what is relevant to your business, what would drive maximum profitability for your business, you have to optimize your cost in the AWS. You have to manage, you have to monitor your resources appropriately to make sure that every single resource that is running in the AWS cloud is valuable for your business, is driving maximum profitability or maximum value or benefit for your organization. You don't want to run instances that are not usable or that are not producing any result, right? Or you don't even want to run an instance that is producing result but in a way that is least efficient. Let me take this example. Let us say that John is a single person and then he want to rent a house where he is going to stay. So what John want now is shelter. Then now John goes and then he goes and rent a 3 apartment room, right? John is renting 3 apartment room, a house that is made up of 3 rooms, kitchen, toilet, and all the rest. But in this house, John is going to stay in only one room. He's going to use only one room for maybe even for a year, right? He's only going to use a single room and then a toilet and then the kitchen. The other 2 rooms that are there in the house, they are useless. He will not be using it. They will just stay idle, and he will be spending money for those rooms that he is not using. It's true, John, he want to stay in a house, he is getting shelter, but he is getting this shelter at a higher cost compared to what he is benefiting from. John instead could go and then he rent a single apartment room that has a single room, has a toilet, has a kitchen and a parlor, and he is going to stay there comfortably without having to spending he will be staying there comfortably, spending the least amount of money without having to spend for two other rooms that he will not be using. So in the AWS cloud, it's true, you need databases, you need instances to be able to deploy your application, you need a lot of resources to be able to deploy your application. But while looking or deploying these resources, you have to make sure that the amount of instances that you are deploying in the cloud at any moment should be the amount of instance that you need for you to be able to run the workload that is at hand, right? That is it. You want to also make sure that the storage capacity or the type of instance that you are running is the instance type that is useful or relevant for the workload that you want to use at the particular moment. Because if you deploy a greater instance type, let us say you have a particular workload, you have a particular application, that application just need 4 GB of storage and then 3 GB of RAM and then maybe 2 virtual CPUs for it to be able to run. But you go and then you deploy an instance type that maybe is having 200 GB and then the RAM is having maybe 16 GB RAM and then you're having maybe 8 virtual CPU. It's true your application is going to run, but what is going to happen is that this is going to run at a higher cost. You have to spend a lot of money to get your application run. Meanwhile, you could still get that same value by spending a little amount of money. So this is very important. So this is the reason why you have to monitor your AWS clouds to make sure that every single resource that you are using in the cloud is important, because if you do not monitor it, you are going to see that your cost is going to increase, right? So the second reason why AWS cost optimization matters is that many users pay for unused or underused resources. As I was just saying in the case of John, many people are paying for resources that are unused. John is a single person. He go and rent a 3 apartment room, and when he rent that 3 apartment room, what is actually happening? He's only staying in a single room and then using the kitchen, the bedroom, and the parlor. Two other rooms are single and he is still paying for those two rooms that are single. That is the same thing that is happening in the cloud. Somebody, he need to run an application that need only 4 GB of storage, as I earlier explained, but he's going to deploy an instance that will have maybe 200 GB of storage. What is he doing? He is underusing this application. He's underusing what the resources that he's having in the cloud. You need a small amount, you need a small resource, but you go and buy a huge amount of resource, and as a result of that, you are spending too much on that, right? This is why cost optimization matters, because you don't want to overspend on what is not important for you. And also, one also important thing is that many people are underusing their resources. So like you are going to see, as we said in the beginning, cost optimization is not only for you to cut money and put in the pocket. There are people also at a particular moment in time that they have resources that need maybe 4 GB of storage, as we earlier said, but they are going to deploy a resource that have but only maybe 2 GB of storage because they want to keep money in their pocket. And as a result of that, their application is not scalable, their application is not reliable, and is not also running efficiently in the cloud. And as a result of that, there is high latency, and they are losing a lot of users because they are losing traffic, because their application is having a high latency. It is not operating efficiently. Users do not get what they want at the speed that they want in their application. So cost optimization is also about you maximizing value. You make sure that your client are having the greatest value that they can have at a particular moment in time, right? So it's not only about reducing the amount of money that you spend, right? This is also very important. And one of the reasons why many people also spend is that at a particular moment in time, they allow resources to be running that they are not using those particular resources. For example, let us say that there is this particular organization called XYZ this particular organization have developers that they have developed a particular feature of their application and they want to test this particular feature. So what are they going to do? They will go to their development account in AWS. They are going to start a particular instance, and when they start the instance, they are going to test their application, and when they finish testing their application, what is it going to do? They are not going to stop the instance that they started. They will allow the instance and it will be there running, and when it is running, it is costing them money. So they are going to be spending for resources that they are not using. They are going to store some files in an S3 bucket, and maybe after they store the file in an S3 bucket, after maybe 1 month, they will not need that file again. And what is going to happen? They will not go and delete that file that they have stored in their S3 bucket. They are going to allow that file there. And what is going to happen? AWS will be cutting them. You'll be billing them for that particular resources that they are using, even though that resources is not useful to them. So many people pay for resources that are unused. They have instances running in the cloud that is not valuable to them at the moment. Maybe the resources is valuable to you throughout for 5 days, like you work from Monday to Friday. Those resources are useful to you, but you are not running critical workload, right? And during the week, and those resources are not useful to you because you will not be working on those instances. And instead for them stopping those instances during the weekend, what is going to happen is that they are going to allow the instances to be there running, and as the instance is running, that's how AWS is cutting them, right? So you have to be very tactical for you to be able to appropriately manage or optimize your bills in the cloud. The other reason why cost optimization is important, because cost optimization help you save money, improve performance, and scale smartly, right? When you optimize the resources that you are using in the cloud, you only pay for what you are using, and you only pay not only for what you are using, but you pay for what is driving business value to you. If a resource is not driving business value to you, you bring down that resource, and then you continue with other resources that are bringing value to you. And when you do like this, you are going to improve your performance. You are going to spend better on the resources that are providing more value to you. Or you are going to take the money that you have saved from this, maybe from the development team or from the technical team, and maybe if you are a big organization, you can spend that money in marketing, you can spend it in research, you can spend it in other areas that is going to drive more profitability for your business, right? This is very important. And cost optimization help you to scale smartly. Somebody that when you talk about cost optimization, you talk about scale. You talk about scale. Cost optimization is very important, right? And also, one of the reason why cost optimization matters is that it's relevant for student, startup developers, and large organization. So when you are a student, you want to study in the AWS cloud, you don't have a lot of money to spend. You have only a little amount of money to spend. And when you practice cost optimization, it's going to permit you to be able to use that money adequately and get the value that you want. But if you do not practice cost optimization, you are going to spend all the money that you have without actually getting the value that you need. That is why cost optimization is important for everybody, even for startup. When you are starting a business, you are building that business, you have limited fund. It will be useless for you to take money that you could spend in something that is very important, maybe like your marketing, your research and development, your business operation, and then you come and spend it on instances that you are not using, or you are overusing, or you are underusing, right? Cost optimization is important. And when you are a developer, you can cost optimization permit you to be able to work efficiently, manage resources efficiently in your organization. And when you are a large organization, the fact that you are a large organization does not mean you have to spend money uselessly, right? You also have to want to spend. That is why most of the people that are interested even in cost optimization, they are big organization, because they want to save money. Nobody wants to spend money for useless things. So this is why cost optimization is important, because if you do not optimize your cost, you are going to pay for what you are not using, your bills are going to grow, and then you might end up shutting down, because the money that you could the instances that the money that you could use for instances that are going to drive business value, you have spent it uselessly on resources that you are not using, and as a result of that, you don't have money even again to be able to run the most important workload that are important for you, to deploy the applications that will bring value to you, right? So now let us look at the other reason. Let us go to the other part of our video. Common mistakes that people does that drive up AWS cost. This is very important. What are the common mistakes that people does, especially beginners, that drive up AWS costs? The first thing is that they run instances, databases, or even lambda function that are not in use. They allow them to be running even though they are not in use. Just as I explained, you are working, you are in the development environment, you spin up a particular instance to be able to perform a particular test. You do the test maybe for 2 hours, and when you finish doing the test for 2 hours, instead of you terminating or stopping that instance, you allow the instance to be running. And when that instance is running, what is going to happen? AWS will be billing you. AWS cloud computing is pay as you go. So when they say pay as you go, as far as the instance is up and running, whether you are using it or you are not using it, they are going to bill you for it. So in order for you to avoid that, whenever you finish running a resource, you clear the resource immediately, right? This is what is going to help you spend less. So whatever database you are not using, whatever EC2 instance you are not using, you clear them down. Maybe during weekend when you work, you are not working during weekend, your development environment, all the instances that are running there, you can stop all those instances during the weekend, and when you come back during the next week, you can start back those instances and then you use them. So many people, they spend more because they allow instances that they are not using to be running, and as a result of that, the AWS is being billing them for that. And then the second reason why people spend more on AWS is that they ignore free tier usage limit. This is also still mostly for beginner. What is actually going to happen when they talk about free tier? It does not mean that it will be free forever. It means free tier, it is a quarter, it is a part that is free, and there is a limit to that. Whenever you exceed that limit, AWS is going to bill you for that, and you have like 750 hours per month for you to be able to use. And not all instance type have this free tier. Some people, when they hear that AWS is having free tier, they just go and spin any kind of instance up. They don't even check whether this instance have free tier or not. There are instances that have free tier, and there are those that does not have free tier. If you do not make this check and you just go and bring up any kind of instance, AWS is going to bill you for that, and you'll be surprised to see bills, right? You'll be surprised to see bills. So free tier does not mean that will be free forever. It means that there is a particular quantity, there is a particular portion, or there is a particular amount of time that if you use this particular resource, you are going to be unbilled. But if you cross this particular limit, this amount of time, you are going to be billed for whatsoever thing you are using, right? So that is what is happening. So there is a limit to that tier. It is not free forever. It is not free forever, and you can use that amount of hours even in, maybe you can use that. Does not, when they like you, there is a certain things you have to understand. When they say 750 hours per month, if you finish all that amount of 750 hours of instant usage that you have to use maybe in 1 week, the other remaining week you are going to be used, you are going to be billed for. How can you do that? Maybe you want to you want to run a particular application, you have 5 instances of that particular application running at the same time, and then you run that application maybe for 5 days or for maybe 1 week. What is going to happen is that AWS is going to compile all the usage that you are having for all those maybe 10 instances that are running simultaneously. He's going to combine them. When they pass the free tier, even maybe before a week or maybe before the month comes to an end, the other resources that you'll be using, you will be billed for that, right? This is very, very important. This is thing you have to know. And also, one other mistake people does that drive up price cost in the AWS cloud is that they store 5 inexpensive S3 storage classes. This is very, very important. Like when it comes to AWS S3, there are different kind of storage classes, and all these classes depend on the kind of data you are storing, the frequency of access of this data, right? So frequency of access and also retrieval time. So when you have a particular data that the frequency of access is not actually high, you should not put it in standard frequently access. Put it maybe in standard infrequently access, or maybe you can put it even in Amazon Glacier, depending on the kind of data that you are storing, right? So you always make sure that you use the right AWS storage S3 storage class for the kind of data that you are using. And you can also use lifecycle policy for you to be able to move data from one bucket type or to another bucket class when the usage or the free access frequency reduces with time. This is really something that you have to do, but many people do not do that. They take a data that they don't even need, they put it in S3 frequent S3 standard frequent access. And what is going to happen is that every data that is found in this class is highly built. Like, this class is one of the most expensive of all the S3 standard class storage classes. So when you put your data here, AWS is going to bill you highly, right? So this is something that you have to know. So whenever you want to store data, look, which kind of data am I storing, and how long will I store this data? How long will this data be valuable for me? And how does the value of the data or the access frequency increases or reduces with time? You need to look for all this, and when you do that, you can now store it in the appropriate S3 classes. And when also the access reduces, or the latency of retrieval reduces in time, you can move it to other standard classes, right? Is very important. And also, one of the things that mistake people does is that they launch services in high cost AWS region by default, right? When you come to your AWS cloud platform, you are going to have a region that is being picked for you. And when you want to launch your resources, your resources are going to be launched in those particular region. One thing you have to know is that there are some AWS region that have high cost for resources that are deploying there, and there are others that have low cost. That means, if for example you want to start an Amazon T2 T2.x large instance in maybe a particular region like California, and you want to start that particular AWS instance in another region like North Virginia, what is going to happen is that the instance that you are going to start in California will be built higher than the one that you are going to start in North Virginia. All this because of certain things like cost of real estate in that particular region, cost of electricity in that particular region, how long AWS have been established in that particular region, compliance law, regulation, and all these factors, they affect the cost of resources in a particular region. So when you are a startup, you don't have a lot of regulatory issues, compliance issue in your organization that you have to deal with. You can always make sure that you deploy your application in AWS region that have a list, that in AWS region that the amount to pay is least, like in North Virginia, right? Those regions, they have low cost, and not in zone like California, unless you are bound to do that by law, right? So we are going to look at now at strategy to be able to reduce your AWS spend. So the first strategy that we are going to look is track and monitor spending. Tracking and monitoring is indispensable in cost optimization in the AWS cloud. For you to be able to know that this resources is paying is costing me high, and this resources is costing me low, this resource is being overused or underused, you have to be able to monitor those resources. If you do not monitor the resource, you will not know whether this one is costing me high or not. You will just see bills, you don't even know where those bills are coming. So for you to be able to optimize your resources, the first thing that you have to do is that you have to track and monitor these resources continuously, right? You have to track and monitor them continuously. And when you track and monitor them continuously, you are now going to have data that is going to permit you to know which strategy to use to be able to adequately reduce your cost in the AWS cloud. So the first thing that you can do is that you use AWS Cost Explorer to see usage pattern and trends in the AWS cloud. This is very, very important. Use AWS Cost Explorer. You see the usage pattern. How long have I been using this particular resource? How have my use in time been increasing? All these things, which resource is giving, which resource is costing me more amount of money than another? What are the various regions where my application are running in? Like, you use Cost Explorer, you explore your cost to see what is actually happening. The next thing that you can do is you can set budget and alarm to prevent overspending. If you are somebody, you know that you don't have a lot of money to spend, what is going to happen is that AWS permit you to be able to set budget for a month, right? So you can say, in this month, this is the amount of money I have to spend. And when you put the money, you set the budget in AWS cloud, and then you set alarm that when this budget reach maybe 50%, when I've used 50% of this budget, 70%, 80%, 90%, you alarm, you notify me, and then I'm going to see how I'm going to optimize my workload, right? To be able to match my expenditure in the cloud. And the next thing that you can do is you check billing dashboard weekly for early warning sign. Always check your billing dashboard weekly to see which resources is driving high cost, which one is driving low cost, and then you can see, is this resource even important? What is there? You now start troubleshooting. Why is the cost increasing and why is the cost reducing? And you can always try to compare the course you've been using for this week with other week, the course you've been using for this month with other month. Always try to do this comparison to see which month is my cost increasing and which month is my cost reducing. Why is it that in this month my cost reduced? Why is it that in this month my cost increased? Was there a particular event that caused this, or was it that maybe in that month my developer were more active? You look for all the reasons. Like, you need data, right? You need data to be able to make meaningful decision. And you can also use resources like CloudWatch to monitor services and usage pattern. This is going to provide you with data that can permit you to be able to make meaningful decision, right? You always have to track and monitor your spending in order for you not to be able to spend more on what you are not using, right? That is it. Very, very important. So the next strategy you can use to be able to optimize your cost in the AWS cloud is you have to plan before you build, right? So you have to plan before you build. You should not be somebody that it is you just come and do everything by surprise. No, do everything with planning. Before you deploy resource in the AWS cloud, you have to sit down and look, what is the duration of this project? How long will the instance be running? You have to put all these things down. How long will this instance be running? What are the expected traffic? What is the volume of traffic that will be coming to this instance or this application as it is running? And what is the data size? What is the amount of data that this application will be using, right? What is the amount of data, the size of data that this application is going to be using? You have to know all this. It is only when you gather all this data that you will now know which kind of AWS instance type, which kind of database type that will I have to use for this particular application, and what should be the storage, what should be the memory, what should be the virtual CPU that I have to select for this particular application, right? You have to know all this information, a lot of all this information. Expected traffic is going to now permit you to know how many instances of this application, how many AWS instance should I allow to be running simultaneously, right? You also have to know the traffic pattern. How much, at what particular time of the day do I have more traffic, and at what particular time of the day do I have less traffic? How is my traffic varying with time? This permits you now to set auto scaling, right? So that at the particular moment where traffic is high, you can increase the traffic, and the moment where traffic is low, you can reduce the amount of instances that is running in your AWS cloud. These are very valuable information that you do not have to play with. You have to do all these things for every project. You have to make sure that this is a standard, that before everybody go and start any instance, they have to prepare, they have to know almost every valuable information that is needed for them to be able to start that instance, so that you will not be spending uselessly, right? You will not be spending uselessly. And there are also resources like AWS pricing calculator that permit you to estimate cost ahead of time. When you have all this data, you know that this application will be running at this particular time for this particular duration. This is the expected traffic, this is the data size that will be running. You can now go and then you input all those information in the AWS pricing calculator, and it's now going to estimate the cost ahead of time for you, so that you know amount you are going to spend. And when the expenditure is more than that, you can now see why is it that this expenditure is more than that. So these are various relevant things you can do for you to be able to bring down your AWS cost while maximizing business value. You can also use serverless tools like Lambda, H3, and DynamoDB to avoid over provisioning. If your the application you are running is not an application that is running momentarily, that will only have to start up at momentarily and do certain function and then it ceases, you can use AWS Lambda function. That these Lambda functions are going to be invoked whenever the usage is important, or whenever the criteria of usage is important, and when the Lambda function is being invoked, it's going to do the processing, and when it's finished, it's going to stop, right? You can use H3, like they reset in H3, there are different storage classes. If you don't have data that will be highly frequently accessed, you can put them in Amazon H3 Glacier, right? This is going to reduce your storage, right? And all the rest. So you should always test deployment with small or temporary resources first. This is very important thing. Many people, whenever they want to test something, they are going to go and bring big instances for them to be able to test that. No, do not do that. Whenever you want to test a deployment, start it with small resources and even temporary resources that are not permanent, for you to be able to test and then get enough data to now see whether you have to continue or you have to do some fixes before you go forward, right? So you should always design cost aware architecture early and use sprint to stop and start rows, right? You have to know that when this particular value, when this particular parameter is in play, this is what we have to do, this is what we don't have to do. These are very important. So the third strategy that we have to use is you have to use the right services and region, right? So select regions with lower pricing wherever possible. If you are, as I said earlier, if you are region, you are running an application that is not having a high regulation on it, or there is not a huge amount of compliance issue and all the rest, you can always select region with lower pricing where possible. And you can use Graviton EC2 instance for better price to price optimization, price to performance optimization ratio. Graviton EC2 instance are a type of instances that have been developed specifically by AWS, and these people have a higher amount of discount of maybe up to 90% discount whenever you use them, right? You can use these instances. They are going to help you to reduce your spending in AWS. So you always have to choose the right S3 storage class, whether is it the standard, is it the infrequent access, is it the one zone, is it the glacier, depending on your workload. You can research more on this type of classes. Then you now look at your workload, you see which of them fit your workload, and then you deploy your application on them. And you can also replace EC2 with Fargate or Lambda for simpler workload. If you have workload that are simple, they are not complex, you can use the Fargate or the Lambda, which are serverless, for you to be able to run your application. And you can also leverage pricing model. AWS have different pricing models that you can be able to leverage depending on how much you are going to be, how long you are going to be using your AWS. There are on-demand instances, there are spot instances, there are reserve instances. You can look your application and you check which of them is the one that is going to, which of the pricing model that AWS has is going to permit me to better deliver the value of my application, right? If you are having a very high critical workload and that you have to use AWS for a longer period of years, you can use the reserve instances, and that is going to give you like up to 70% of reduction of discount, right? You take that. And if you are having a workload that maybe you are not sure that you are going to use it for a long amount of time, but the workload is critical, you want it to be running all the time without any interruption, you can use on-demand instances, right? You use on-demand, you pay as you go, and whenever your workload stop, you stop the instance and then you go. And if you have workload that is not highly critical, that can permit interruption with time, you can use spot instances from AWS, and this is going to permit you to spend less also while also getting high value. So if you are using batch type operating processes, work best with a Lambda with significant cost saving. So the fourth strategy we are going to see is always automate shutdown and scaling. So you should stop test environment at night or on weekend, right? We've already spoken about this. When all the test environments should be stopped at night or on weekend. When you are not using them, you should stop them, right? And you should also use Lambda schedules or the instant scheduler for automation, right? All these are very important for you to automate all these things. Whenever you are not using a particular instance, you stop it, right? You stop it, right? These are very, very important. So, and you also implement auto scaling rules to adjust resources used automatically. When you are in when the traffic is high, you scale up. When the traffic is low, you scale down. Auto scaling permits you to be able to do that, so that you don't have instances running idly that are not like driving value to your organization or to your business, and then still spending you amount of money. And you can use infrastructure as code, like Terraform, to rebuild instead of keeping idle resources running. You just have to go Terraform, apply, and you start up the resources, and when it's finished, you run Terraform destroy, and then it's going to destroy all those resources, right? That is very, very important. You just have to do that, right? And you also have to leverage pricing model. This is very important. As I said in the beginning, you use spot instances for short-term or flexible workload, and you're going to have up to 90% cheaper rate, right, for your performance. And you can also purchase saving plan or reserve instances for consistent usage. If you know that you'll be using AWS for consistently for 1 year, 2 year, 3 year, then you can look at the reserve instances and then you use them. And then you can also review Compute Optimizer and Trusted Advisor for saving recommendation. These are like experts that AWS have put in place for them to be able to give you, to advise you on how to better use your AWS infrastructure, right? That is very, very important. And so you can mix on demand, spot, and reserve pricing for the best cost performance balance, right? You can mix all of them. Depending on your workload. You can use spot, you can also use spot while using reserve, and also while using on demand at the same time. This all depend on the workload that you are running, right? It depends on the workload you are running. And then now let us look for quick wins for beginners. So the first thing is that you should always monitor free tier usage with alarm. Monitor your free tier, right? Monitor your free tier. This is especially for beginners. You should not allow yourself to be deceived by the concept of free tier. Monitor it effectively so that you only pay for what you are using and get value for what you are using, so that you will not exceed and then they will have to bill you for that. That is very important. And if you want to host static website, you can use S3 and CloudFront to be able to host your static website, and this is going to permit you to be able to gain value, right? This is very important. Why spending less, right? You don't have to start expensive instances for you just to host static website. You can use S3, like S3 and also CloudFront to host your static website. And you can always start with things like AWS Lightsail or Amplify for low cost setup, right? If you want to run your application, you can use this. They are very important for you to run your application. And you should always clean up unused resources daily during learning or testing. Whenever you want to learn, always make sure that whenever you finish using a particular resource, you should close it down, right? You clean it up. And even before you want to run any resource, always make sure that you come prepared. It's not when you come and start the EC2 instance that you are working on that you start thinking, okay, I have to bring this, I have to do that. Prepare everything, bring everything that you have to use, like display all the resources. Let all the resources that you have to use, all the tools, everything that you have to use whenever to deploy your application, be there already before you start the EC2 instance. This is what is going to permit you to be able to reduce your storage. And also for advanced user, the first thing that you have to do is that you have to use consolidated billing for multiple accounts to get volume discount, right? If you have more than 3 AWS account, you can do consolidated billing. So AWS is going to bill all those accounts at the same time, and when you do that, it's going to permit you to get a volume discount when you use consolidated billing, right? And then you can also tag resources by project, team, or client for precise tracking. We said that cost optimization, you cannot talk about cost optimization without talking about tracking and monitoring. And for you to be able to track resources appropriately, you have to tag these resources depending on the project you are working on, depending on the team you are working on, or even depending on the client you are working on, so that every time you will track, you can say that, okay, at this moment I want to track the project for the development team. You track how are they using their instances, what all these things, you track all of them like this. And you can also integrate third-party tools like CloudZero, Datadog, and KeepCost, right? These third-party tools are also going to help you, right? And also you can adopt a FinOps mindset. You first of all have cost, you have performance, and accountability. This is very, very important. When you do all this, it's going to help you to be able to better optimize your usage in the AWS cloud. So this is a summary and final tip. Monitor cost frequently with built-in AWS tool, Cost Explorer, CloudWatch, and Cloud Billing, and all the red billing management dashboard. You use all that to be able to monitor your costs. Very, very important. You can even set budget if you want to, if you don't have a huge amount of money to spend, and you can also use AWS pricing calculator for you to be able to have an overview, or like to have a preview of how much you are going to spend for all the resources you are using. And you can design for efficiency from the beginning. Design for efficiency from the beginning. Always put efficiency in what you are doing. Always make sure that whatever instance I'm bringing up, whatever resource I'm using up, is going to is going to drive me the maximum value. I will not be underusing it. I will not be underusing the resources that I'm deploying, and I will not also be unusing it. You design everything for efficiency, right, from the beginning. So you plan before you get to actually build. This is going to permit you to do well. And then you clean up and right size resources often. Always make sure that every day before you end the day, before you start the day, and before you end the day, you look, you check what are the various resources that are running. Are they useful or are they not useful? Before, like when workload are not, when you have resources that are not useful at the moment, you clean them up. And before weekend, you go for weekend, you clean up resources in the development environment, right? This is very important. And then you take advantage of pricing option and automation feature. Very, very important. So we are going to end with this course. Optimizing costs in the cloud isn't just about saving money, it's about enabling smarter innovation, greater efficiency, and long-term sustainability. Thank you very much for actually watching this video. If you found this video valuable, please do not hesitate to share, like, comment, and also subscribe to the channel so that you get more videos from me as time is going. I'll be like bringing up a lot of videos in when it comes to DevOps and also cloud. We'll be having projects that we'll be working on, so we'll be able to give you hands-on knowledge that you need. And if maybe you saw this video valuable but you don't know how to do this for your organization, you can book me using the email in the comment below, and then we are going to discuss how I can be able to deploy this for you. I can be able to help you bring this execution right down to your organization. Thank you very much, and see you in the next video.